and President Bill Clinton.
Hello, Stony Brook. Let's hear it for Stony Brook University. Are you ready for Congressman Tim Bishop? Are you ready for President Bill Clinton? I hope you're ready. I'm going to be brief for two reasons. Number one, because we have some exceptional people here in Stony Brook tonight, Congressman Bishop and President Clinton, but also because I have learned the importance of brevity as a member of Congress. Now, President Clinton, he travels all over America, all over the world. In fact, he just came in from Michigan. Yesterday, he was in Kentucky. He's on his way to Syracuse. He goes all over the country. What he may not know is that in New York, we tend to speak a little faster than the rest of the country. And here's why I'm going to be brief. I learned this lesson early on when I spoke to a group of fourth graders, Mr. President, in my congressional district. I try and go into schools as often as I can, because everything I need to know about federal policy on education, you know where I learn it best? In schools. Talking to teachers and administrators and parents and children. So I went to this one school, the Norwood Avenue Elementary School in Northport. There's some Norwood Avenue folks. And sir, I gave what I thought was a great speech. Until a few weeks later, I got a manila folder stuffed with notes from those fourth graders. Fourth graders are the most honest human beings on the face of the earth. And there was one note, it's absolutely true. I loved it so much, it stood out. I saved it, I framed it. It hangs in my office in Washington, D.C. even tonight. And this is what it said, no embellishment. And that fourth grade scroll, some of you may remember. Dear Mr. Israel, thank you for coming to Norwood Avenue. Thank you for coming to my school. Thank you for coming to my class. Thank you for talking about your job. Thank you for teaching us about the House. Thank you for teaching us about the Senate. Thank you for teaching us about the White House. Thank you for inviting me to the White House. My mother said I can't come. Thank you for talking to us about the environment and recycling and telling us to clean our rooms and our beaches and our towns. Thank you very much. You were very interesting. I hope you'll come back one day soon. Sincerely yours, your pal Jeffrey. P.S. You spoke so long, you made us miss recess. True story. This is how we roll, Mr. President. So, just a few points, and then I'm going to introduce Congressman Bishop. Look, folks, every election is about something. Every election is about something. And this election is about those fourth graders. This election is about what kind of country we want those fourth graders to grow up in. This election is about what kind of priorities we provide to those fourth graders. Now, Tim and I, we work with a whole bunch of people in Washington, D.C. And you could not have a more vivid contrast between the priorities that we believe in for those fourth graders and their future and the priorities that House Republicans agree on. I'll give you three quick examples. Number one, House Republicans believe that those fourth graders will do better if we continue to provide corporate tax loopholes to allow big corporations to ship jobs overseas. No, we believe that what we ought to do is provide tax incentives for American businesses to build infrastructure so that we can create jobs here and make it in America. That's the difference. Second difference. House Republicans believe that those fourth graders will do better if we continue to provide $40 billion in subsidies to the biggest oil companies on earth. We believe that those fourth graders would do a heck of a lot better if instead of subsidizing oil companies $40 billion, we allowed every middle-class college student to refinance their college debt. $1.2 trillion in college debt so that they could get a little bit of a head start in their paychecks, because the only thing that's truly too big to fail is the middle class in this country. So that's what we believe. Right? And finally, John Boehner and Karl Rove and the Koch brothers, they believe that those fourth graders will do better if we continue to tolerate an economy that lets one of those fourth grade girls grow up, get a job, and get paid 77 cents to every dollar that a man makes for equal work? No. What we believe in is that no woman in America should be paid less than that of a man for equal work, and we will pass a pay equity bill and pay a woman the same as a man for equal work. Those are the differences between us and them. That's what this election is about, ladies and gentlemen. That is what President Clinton has been working for, what Tim Bishop works for, what we work for. That's what's at stake. Now here's my final point. Don't underestimate what's going on here. And I'm the chairman of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. And President Clinton and Congressman Bishop and I were talking about this when he came into the building. Every morning I wake up and I hear about these money bombs that House Republicans are dropping, that Karl Rove is dropping, Crossroads, that the Republican super PACs are dropping. And of course they're going to do that. They have to protect their subsidies. They have to protect their special interests. They have to protect more corporate tax loopholes. So just to give you an example, $133.4 million, Mr. President, that House Republicans and their super PACs are going to spend against our candidates. They've already spent $71 million. Last week, another $10 million. On Sunday night, I got the phone call, another $6.4 million. Tim Bishop alone, they're going to spend $4 million against Tim Bishop, and we're not going to let them get away with it. We've got Tim Bishop's back. They have all the money in the world, but we've got you. So we need you out there, folks. We need you knocking on doors. We need you making phone calls. We need you walking door to door, block by block, precinct by precinct, all over, to make sure that we pull out our vote. And why are they spending $4 million against Tim Bishop? Why is Karl Rove and Crossroads and the Koch brothers and the oil companies and the petrodollar interests, why are they spending $4 million against Tim Bishop? Here's why. Because they want to protect maximum subsidies to big oil companies. Tim Bishop is the congressman who introduced the bill that will force Congress to vote on a minimum wage for America's middle class and working families. That's why they want him out. Because when they shut down the federal government for 16 days, it was Tim Bishop who offered the bill that said, reopen the federal government, and every single Republican in the House said, no, we'd rather keep it closed. That's why they want him out. He wanted it open, they wanted to keep it closed. Because Tim Bishop wrote the bill that increases Pell Grants for the middle class and working families and reduces interest on student loans. That's why they want him out. Well, I spent $4 million against Tim Bishop because Tim Bishop is pissing him off. That's why.
Woo!
Are we ready to re-elect Tim Bishop to the United States Congress? Are we ready to work hard for Tim Bishop? Get people to vote for Tim Bishop? Ladies and gentlemen, he's coming back because we got his back. Congressman Tim Bishop.
So much, Stony Brook University. Thank you. And to Congressman Steve Israel, thank you so much for being a dear friend, but more important, for providing the leadership that you provide for House Democrats and for being that voice for sane, responsible public policy that helps the middle class. Thank you very much. I am enormously proud that President Clinton is here again. He was here in 2010, as you know. And, I'm enormously proud that he is here, and we're going to hear from him in a moment. But I am also very proud to represent this great university. It is truly a great university. And it is also the largest employer in the 1st Congressional District. 18,000 employees. Second largest has 3,000 employees. So by a factor of 6, this is the most important, the most prominent employer in the 1st Congressional District. So here's the mantra that I've adopted for myself. when I look at public policy issues. The mantra is, if it's good for Stony Brook University, it's good for Long Island. And if it's bad for Stony Brook University, it's bad for Long Island. Let me tell you something else that is on the ballot, in addition to those fourth graders that Congressman Israel talked about. What's on the ballot this November, whether you realize it or not, is the future of the student financial aid programs that allow an enormous number of students to go to this school. And what's on the table, frankly, is whether we're going to be able to keep the Pell Grant where it is, or whether it's going to drop considerably. Whether we're going to be able to keep the Perkins Loan Program where it is, or whether it's going to drop considerably. Whether we're going to allow interest rates once again to skyrocket. Whether we're going to curb private lending so as to protect students, or whether we're going to allow it to continue to be the wild, wild west of student lending. So that's what's on the ballot. And when Congressman Israel talked about one of the reasons that they're coming after me so hard, they're coming after me so hard because one of the priorities that I place above virtually every other priority is that young people get to go to college. Okay? They get to get their slice of the American dream. They get to climb that next rung on the ladder. That's what education's all about. That's your ticket into the middle class. That's what lets you stay in the middle class. And it's imperiled, folks. It's imperiled because our colleagues on the other side of the aisle in Washington say, no, 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 we can't afford it. Well, let me tell you what we can't afford. We can't afford for you students not to be here. We can't afford for your students not to have a future. And we can't afford for us to put barriers in the way of the great minds that are educated each and every day at this institution and institutions just like it all over the country. That's what's on the ballot. And so, I'm here filled with pride, but I'm also here to ask for your support and to tell you that when I came to Stony Brook University on Election Day of 2012, and I walked through the Student Activity Center and I saw that line that snaked through the Student Activity Center and then around the building and then around the building again, because people were waiting in line to vote. Now I want to come back here on the afternoon of November 4th and I want to see the same line. Because I know if I see the same line, I know there's going to be a ton of Bishop voters in there. That's what we need. Now, on to the main event, folks. I can't tell you how proud I am to stand here to be able to introduce President Bill Clinton. If there is a more charismatic and a more talented figure in America, I'd like to meet him or her. I don't think there is. And his presidency, let's just look at the presidency of William Jefferson Clinton. Longest peacetime economic expansion in our history. Created 22 million jobs. Lowest unemployment rate in decades. Lowest inflation rate in decades. And highest home ownership rate in decades. That, you add up all of that, and what are you talking about? You're talking about economic stability. You're talking about people truly getting their slice of the American dream, and you're talking about America truly being the land of opportunity that we all know it is and we all want it to be. So let me say no more, except let us give a big New York 1 Stony Brook University welcome.
I want to thank Congressman Bishop for letting me come back to Stony Brook. It was the site of one of our greatest collective victories, thanks to you. Thanks to you and only to you, he won that tough race in 2010 by 263 votes, thanks to you. I want to thank Congressman Steve Israel, particularly for his leadership of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. We have talked a zillion times because I'm going around the country trying to help save some of our endangered incumbents who are doing a good job and elect some challengers. And they said we couldn't elect anybody. We are on the verge of electing 2 challengers and taking over 2 seats in my native state of Arkansas where they said we couldn't get enough votes to count. Thank you, Mr. Israel. I want to thank the whole Stony Brook family, the administrators, the teachers, and the students who are here, and especially I thank the Young Democrats for hosting this event and giving us a chance to get together. And I want to thank your county executive, Steve Ballone, for warming up the crowd. And, you know, he really looks like a political leader. I looked at him when he walked out and I thought, I wonder if I ever looked that good when I was young. One of the things you have to learn when you get older is to feel no resentment. You know? Look, if you go around the country today, you think about all the challenges and all the opportunities America has, you can get pretty depressed looking at some of these elections because of all this black bag money that's coming into states to run negative ads, often under the guise of phony committee names. You can't tell for the life of you who put up the money. And that's what we owe to the Republicans on the Supreme Court that gave us the Citizens United decision. They said it was the inverse. You know, the great French writer Anatole France said that the poor and the rich alike had an equal right to sleep under the bridge at night. Now, this Supreme Court says that the poor and the rich alike have the power to spend unlimited amounts of money all over America without telling us where the money came from. And the thing that makes me sad about it is that this election is really about what Steve and Tim talked about. So I want to talk to you a little about it tonight. The stakes are high, but I want to talk a little bit about Tim Bishop, the congressman, first. Because Congress is held in very low esteem today, for good reasons. I mean, after all, they shut the government down. They're trying to make it more expensive to go to college when we've already got a dropout rate that's unconscionable because of the debt burden that people are shouldering, and we ought to be reversing that. And there are lots of other challenges, but Tim Bishop has proved that in good times and bad, if you love your job and you believe in the people you represent, and you focus on making the progress you can make and solving the problems you can solve, you can make a huge difference. And that is important to me. I was 30 years old when I was elected Attorney General of my native state. And I just thought about every day, what is it that I can do? And the older I get, doing becomes more important than talking. Talking is very valuable in an environment like this. But if you look at what Tim has done, the money he got to save the Brookhaven Lab, when science and technology is our meal ticket to the future as a country, as a society, as a world, the work he's done to make higher education more affordable. When actually the other party, a lot of them voted to double the interest rates on student loans instead of allow people to refinance them at lower interest rates and pay them back as a small percentage of their income. If every one of you could pay all your college debt, whatever the source, not just the federally insured loans, back as a percentage of your income, the college dropout rate would drop nearly to zero because nobody would ever have to be afraid that they couldn't finance an education. And the work he's done on the environment to protect the water, the beaches, the shoreline of Long Island, it matters a lot to me. And not just because I vacation here with my family every summer. This is a precious resource, this island. And the sound is, and the beaches are. And if it is true that the Atlantic coast of America is the most vulnerable part of our country to climate change and rising sea level, to the melting of the Arctic ice cap, to the prospect that the Gulf Stream will be blocked and we'll have more severe storms, it is more important than it has ever been to have somebody who lives here, who cares about this place, whose family's been here for 12 generations, who'd like to see people here 12 generations from now enjoying what's always been good about the place. I like him because he's always thinking about the future, and he sponsored this bill with your Senator, Kirsten Gillibrand, called the Transfer Act, which would help to get more venture capital in to take the results and fruits of research done in universities and turn it into commercially viable projects. Now, back in the dark ages in 1980, after President Carter was defeated for re-election, he signed a bill sponsored by their colleague, Henry Waxman, who's about to leave the Congress, which was one of the most important pieces of bipartisan legislation, and nobody could run a negative ad on it, and since it hadn't passed, nobody could run a positive ad on it, and the event passed largely unnoticed, but it shapes our country to the present day. It simply says that if a university gets federal money to do research, and that research has commercially viable applications, the university can license the research, it can sell the research, or it can even take an ownership position in a new company and keep the profits as long as they plow the money back into research. To give you an example of the benefits of that, everybody knows Orlando as the capital of Disney World, right? At least all of us parents do. And soon I'll know it, I hope, as a grandparent. Because my granddaughter's only 26 days old, so I think she's a little bit young for Disney World. But anyway, because of Disney World and the Universal theme park there, they need a lot of computer simulation. Keep the things interesting. So Global Entertainment Arts moved their video game division. And then the Pentagon and NASA started spending, listen to this, $5 billion a year. Why? Because it's a lot cheaper to teach somebody to drive a tank, fly a jet airplane, or take a spaceship in outer space on a simulator than the real deal. As a result of that, the University of Central Florida, which nobody knows anything about, hardly out of Florida, unless you're a totally fanatic college football fan and you watch all those games, like me. They have 50,000 undergraduates here. And they have several professors who get 18 months leave to go help start companies because it's become the computer simulation capital of America. That's what this Transfer Act can do for New York. New York ranks second in America in the amount of dollars that our universities get for federal research purposes, and we are not doing a good enough job of turning those ideas into commercially viable projects, and we don't have enough venture capital going into them. When nobody's looking and it's not in the headlines and nobody's talking about it, Tim Bishop's out there working on it. That's what you want. I also like it that he believes in casework. I was the first president ever to set up a casework division in the White House. And I got weekly reports on it. He's got two people that don't do anything but work on veterans' problems. That's a big deal. They closed 16,000 constituent service cases. I mean, so whether it's on the issues or helping people, he's found a way at a time when the Republicans are in the majority in the House, when we see the headlines all about all this Tea Party stuff, to actually get up every day and think, where can I make progress? What are problems I can solve? We need more people like that in Congress. If we had more people like that in Congress, we'd have about 10% of the problems we've got today with our political system in Washington. The Republicans in the states where the president is not popular are spending money to put him on the ballot. Mitch McConnell, the Senate Republican leader, spends all his time running against the president. And he should, because his job approval rating, even now, after spending $50 million in this out-of-state money attacking his opponent, his job approval rating is still 38 to 58. So the people get it. So I've been thinking, how can I make this positive? You know, once you become a grandfather and you live in your 50th high school reunion, it's hard to be mad at anybody anymore. And I have discovered Steve Israel, finally, in that story he told about the kid writing him a letter, he reminded me of a trip I took when in my last year as president to the school. And I had an experience I'll relate to you, but Barack Obama solved this problem, and every conservative Republican who wants to be president should support him for solving this one problem. A congressman named Lou Stokes, who's been a distinguished member of Congress, his brother was the first African-American brother of mayor of Cleveland, was retiring. So I called him on the phone and said, Lou, I'd really like to come to your district and honor you. You've done such a great job. What do you want to do? He said, I want to go to a grade school where your AmeriCorps volunteers are working and teaching our kids to read. So we did. We go to this grade school. It's an old-fashioned school. There's a little stage, and the kids are sitting out there like you are, but it was much smaller. And we give our speech, and then Lou and I go down and we start shaking hands. And the school was about 85% African-American, and we started with the sixth graders over here, and we got down to the first graders and the kindergartners over here. So I'm shaking hands with this 6-year-old boy, and he looks at me and he said, are you really the president? And I said, yes, I am. And he said, but you're not dead yet. And I realized to him the president was George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Abraham Lincoln. The definition of a president was an old dead white guy. So, since Ted Cruz wants to be president, he should thank his lucky stars that Barack Obama destroyed that stereotype, and now people know that at least presidents can go out. Let me put everything they said into some larger context for the young people here. You heard what was said about the economic statistics when I left office, but to me the most important one has not been mentioned. There have been 5 terms dominated by trickle-down economics since President Reagan was elected. His terms, they worked the best because it was the first time in American history we'd ever deliberately run huge deficits in peacetime, where there was no depression and you have no choice. So he could basically tell us we could eat all the candy we wanted, we never have to go to the dentist. We tripled the debt of the country, but we had a strong base. And therefore, they had about 15 million new jobs and quite a bit of growth. When I became president, I said, I want to reverse trickle-down economics. I don't believe in it. It's bad for America. It's making us more unequal. People at the top are doing fine. The rest of the country's not doing as well. And that's before it got really bad. So we had 4 of the 8 budgets I sent were balanced budgets. And still, we doubled funding in education, more than double research funding. The most important thing is we grew together. That's what this election is really all about. Whether you're talking about universal access to preschool, equal pay for women, raising the minimum wage, making college more affordable, and making it easier for people to repay. It's about what are we going to grow together again. Under President Reagan, the top 20% actually did slightly better than they did when I was president, mostly because of the top 1%. But in both categories, both terms, his and mine, top 20% increase in income more than 20%. Get to the next 20%, 25% better than we were there. The middle 20%, 50% better. The 80th percentile, more than 100% better, more than twice as much income growth. But listen to this, the bottom 20%, the people I came from when I was a little boy, and the per capita income of my native state was barely half the national average. Under President Reagan, their incomes increased 0.7%. When we were there, 23.6%. 100 times as many people work their way from poverty into the middle class. This country works better when we grow it from the middle out and give poor people a chance to work their way up, not when we try to restrict the benefits. That is the fundamental fact, and we've got lots of evidence of it. Now, so I want Tim Bishop and Steve Israel and all the people that are trying to help to win, because we've got a new change. No one feels it yet. It won't be a factor in this election, but America is coming back. If you look at the last 150 years of financial crises in rich countries, where there's the kind of collapse we had in 2008, we've had four: 1872, 1892, 1932, and 2008. Japan had a terrible one in 1990. But if you look all over the world in wealthy countries, it takes an average of 10 years just to get back to where you were the day before the crash. It happened in America in 6 years and 1 month ago, or late in September. We have now replaced the jobs we lost in the country. 700,000 of them are manufacturing jobs, because now materials, transportation, and power are a bigger factor than labor costs. We can get manufacturing back in America. In the next 10 years, you're going to see an amazing number of new jobs tied to information technology and to biotechnology. And we've had the lowest inflation in healthcare costs in 50 years, for 4 years running now, even as we have more people that are and our economy has created more jobs than Europe and Japan combined. And what does that mean? Look around this crowd today. Look at the diversity here. There's somebody here from everywhere. No country is better positioned than the United States to seize the opportunities of the 21st century. Because of energy, because we rank first or second in the world in the capacity to generate electricity from the sun and the wind, because we have barely scratched our potential to develop new jobs through energy efficiency. I raised $10 billion, mostly from public and private labor union pension funds, to invest in retrofitting buildings in America, because you can create 7,000 or 8,000 jobs for every $1 billion you invest. And it will revolutionize the economic prospects of the country and make businesses more competitive and parenthetically lower a lot of people's power bills. Which, since New York has 13.9 cents per kilowatt hour power, and that's number one in America, we should be leading the way on that. Now, here's the deal. So what you really need to think, all of the students here, is, what are the terms on which we are coming back? Are we going to grow together, or are we going to go back and trickle down and grow apart? That's really what this election's about. Every specific issue they mentioned, we're on the grow together side, and their opponents are on the grow apart side. It's just laughable, this campaign they're conducting against the minimum wage. They're saying the same things they've been saying for 30 years. Look, I hope I have a little economic credibility here. I raised the minimum wage as a governor. I raised it as president. I tried to raise it a second time. Every time, the other side said exactly what they're saying now. And I got to give them one thing. They are consistent. Doesn't matter how many times you prove they're wrong, they keep saying the same thing. Now, if you raise the minimum wage to $20 an hour tomorrow and you didn't exempt small business, it would slow growth. It would be too burdensome for small businesses. Nobody's talking about that. We're talking about $10.10 an hour. But it doesn't just help the minimum wage workers, it helps millions and millions and millions of others that are a little bit over that. And what do? You're talking about people that have got all they can do to keep body and soul together, to feed and clothe their children. Many of them go to work early in the morning and drop their kids off at daycare and hope to God they'll be all right. They spend all that money. And when they spend it, they make money from merchants. And then they turn around and order more of whatever it was they bought out. And that helps those people. And before you know it, you have added to the economic growth of the country. And if you believe in growing the country from the middle out and giving poor people a chance to work their way into it, you have to support something you know will work. Is it the only thing we should do? No. You have to keep creating more jobs and changing the job mix so you have better paying jobs. You have to keep improving education and training, and we have to get job skills and academic training more back together again instead of having them divided, as we all did for 30 or 40 years, I think wrongly. But we're coming back. This whole election is about the terms on which we will grow. And whether we're going to grow together or grow apart. And I can tell you, when your time in public service is over, there's only really three things that matter. Are people better off when you quit than when you started? The children have a brighter future, and are things coming together or being torn apart? The biggest threat to our collective future today is the political dysfunction in Washington, fueled by big money special interests and ideological extremism. And the reason that in the states where the president's approval rating is low, they're spending all this money to put him instead of their opponents on the ballot is they know they can't win a fair fight. They know their voters don't agree with them. It's like they're saying, this is your last chance to cast a protest vote. And I was laughing at Steve and Tim backstage, all these Senate races, it's really funny. This is your last chance. It's a 2-year protest, it'll be gone in 2 years. And it's not free. You have to give me a 6-year job for your 2-year protest, and I'm going to vote against you for 6 years, but you'll feel so good there for a moment. And I know I'm preaching to the saved here tonight, but every person in this room will pass 100 people in the next 13 days who won't vote unless you convince them to, or at least remind them to. You know I'm telling the truth. Whatever you do with your time, in the next 13 days, every single one of you will pass 100 people who will not vote unless you say something to them. And we in New York, historically, don't have a very good record of voting at midterms. The country doesn't. The reason that Washington is so divided is that massive numbers of people, almost all of them, younger, are lower income, or older and infirm, only vote in presidential years and don't vote in the midterms. But in the midterms, the entire House of Representatives is on the ballot, 1/3 of the Senate is on the ballot, a majority of the governors are on the ballot, the state legislatures are on the ballot, and all these things like what I'm sure you've read in other states, these attempts to restrict voting rights and all that, that's all on the ballot. And if New York could be persuaded to vote in an off-year election the way we vote in the presidential election, we wouldn't be having this rally tonight. So if you like what Tim Bishop said, if you like what Steve Israel said, I want you to think about this for 13 days. The closer you get to making the turnout in the midterm, even just from the students here in Stony Brook, the closer you get, the closer you will be to the future that you want. Because I know, just being here at this great school, looking around, enjoying the diversity of the students, the different backgrounds, the experiences they have, the way they look at the world differently, all of you do. You've got to believe that the more people vote, the better off we'll be. Big, diverse groups make better decisions than small, homogeneous groups do. Equal pay, for example, is not just a women's issue, it's a man's issue. If there's a couple in the house raising kids, and there's a lot of evidence, again, I keep hearing, oh, we can't afford this. There are a number of studies which show that companies that practice equal pay for equal work make more money, are more productive, have less absenteeism, have higher morale among women and men, where people work together more and make more progress and higher profits. So, that's what I want you to think about. If you want to grow together, if you want to send a message to Washington that you're not asking everybody there to agree with you, but you are asking people to act like they've got half good sense and listen to their adversaries and try to get together and figure out something to get the show on the road, you got to vote for Tim Bishop. If you really believe that political dysfunction is a problem and you were clapping your hands, you got to show up at this election. And you got to think about this for 13 days. Every time you pass somebody, you know. Because you will each pass 100 people who won't vote if they're not asked. You know it's true. And it's really important to me because I've had a great life. When I grew up, as I told you, when I was born in Arkansas at the end of World War II, our per capita income was better than half the national average. But when I went to college and when I went to law school, I graduated from Yale Law School because of scholarships and loans. And I paid them back. And I was glad to have them. But I was in the first program in America that let people pay a loan back as a percentage of their income. And I had so much confidence in the American economy, and I so desperately wanted to go home and help build my state. I turned down any chance of going to a big law firm and making a good salary. I turned down chances to clerk for courts. I went home and I never gave a second thought to whether I could make a living. Never. You think about what it would be like for that to be the case in America again, where all of you could just walk out of here and dream your dreams and know that you could find some way to support yourselves in a dignified fashion and do what you wanted to do. That you could take a risk. And maybe you'd fail and have to start again and again and again, but you could make a living. And you could honor your responsibilities. That's what I want for America again. And it all depends on whether we decide to grow together or grow apart. That's what this is about. Tim Bishop should never be within 263 votes of a re-election if he's being opposed by people who are going to support what's been going on down in Washington. It's wrong. The Senate leader, Mr. McConnell, said in a secret speech to the Koch brothers that was leaked, when they got all their people together, that his worst moment in politics in 30 years, his words, not mine, his worst moment was in 2002 when the bipartisan McCain-Feingold bill passed. Now think of that. That bill, A, was bipartisan, B, limited its size of contribution, and C, limited their anonymity. In other words, if you're going to spend money to try to beat somebody, you have to say you were doing it. Now we live in this totally untransparent world where interests that don't care what happens in New York or Kentucky or Arkansas are spending all this money, and they're going to want a return on their investment. You've got to take your country back, one seat at a time. And you have a congressman here. I told Steve and Tim was up there talking, I said, you know, he is a great congressman in the old-fashioned sense of the word. He realizes that every day, no matter what's being voted on in Congress, he can make something good happen for the people of this district. That's why he works on the casework. That's why he wanted to save the lab, which is so important to you. That's why he works hard on trying to figure out ways for all of you to be able to stay in school and pay your debts when you leave. It's common sense. You know it's right. How do we ever get so whacked out because we gave up our responsibilities to vote in midterms. And then the forces that believe that America will work much better if billionaires in secret could spend lots of money running negative ads to stop you from thinking, could control the outcome of a congressional race. I was laughing about this the other day. Once I went to my 50th high school reunion last Saturday, I was thinking about